Who are you?
I'm David Hasselhoff.
Hooray!
Whatever you do, don't hassle the Hoff. We've seen that the consequences can be pretty severe. David Hasselhoff lives a life of glamour and fame, but that also means that all eyes were on him when he struggled with substance abuse that led to that infamous drunken debacle of a video. So, how did the Hoff get to that point? What role did Baywatch play in dooming its cast? And what does David consider the moment that, in his words, literally saved his life?
Are you guys okay?
We've had better days.
We've got all these Hasselhoff answers and more, including the pitfalls that began when he was in his prime that led to David's battle with alcoholism that of course derailed his career. And be sure to stay to the end to find out how David made it into the Guinness Book of World Records, and not once, but twice. But now, without further ado, let's dive into the life of David Hasselhoff.
Hello, Mr. Hasselhoff.
Off to a rough start. It's hard to believe now, but the Hoff's acting career moved at a weird pace. And no, I don't mean literally that sultry slow motion running on the Baywatch beach. Although that kinda proves my point, so let's keep that. What I mean is, some big things he tried started out with a whimper instead of a roar.
Stella.
Simon.
Stella.
Simon.
His big screen debut was Revenge of the Cheerleaders, and it was kind of a loveless means to an end because he needed that film on his resume to officially join the Screen Actors Guild. To each their own, right? But one reviewer said, not much of a plot, but plenty of hijinks. And hey, I'd say that perfectly sums up David Hasselhoff's life. Finally, he got a foothold in The Young and the Restless, but then the show did a big character purge and sent him packing. Look at that new lineup. Finally, as most of us know, he really found his footing thanks to Knight Rider. And in between Knight Rider and Baywatch, he found himself in 1988's Witchery, which unfortunately painted itself into a corner by being the fun kind of horror film, but too gory for typical thriller fans. It is kind of a fun watch though for all you B-movie fans.
Now you get dressed. We gotta find a way out of here.
But finally we had Baywatch to save the day, right? Well, no, not quite actually. The show wasn't exactly a big cash cow. According to David Hasselhoff, its wallet got so empty they didn't have the funds to shoot entire episodes full of plot, so they just padded the runtime with the slow motion beach runs. Which of course worked because the cast was gorgeous. It was a clever strategy, as David himself once explained, quote, "We said, well, girls in bathing suits look good running in slow motion, let's just shoot that. And we found out that the audience kinda liked it." Yeah, I'd say that's a smart move, but it is also an omen of the struggles to come. Is David Hasselhoff still married? It's kinda easy to see what movies or shows the Hoff has been in, so let's take that extra step, shall we? Let's pull back the curtain on his personal life and see how his messy relationships showed us that not all was right under the surface. The latter half of the 1980s made up his first marriage, this one to fellow actor Catherine Hickland. Now she was coming fresh off a divorce from Richard Ernest Knowlton, and the entire time she was treated to a front row seat of the same roller coaster, success and struggle. It was something she was content to wash her hands of, but whatever emotions that bound them at the start were strong enough that she didn't harbor any resentment. Speaking about their marriage, Catherine said, quote, "There are no bad feelings, never was. I always felt bad when things went bad for him, and good when things were going good for him. In fact, the two seemed on decent terms when they crossed paths again at the Knight Rider Festival back in 2010. A big to-do he actually arrived late at, and however friendly things stayed, she did not miss an opportunity to give one final jab, revealing, quote, "He was late for our wedding too, so I'm not surprised." Jeez, come on, Hoff, you gotta at least be on time for the wedding, rookie mistake. Marriage number 2 was also to an actor, this time Pamela Bach. And this most fateful marriage gave the couple 2 daughters, Taylor and Haley. Things got messy in the 2000s, and it was actually David Hasselhoff who filed for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. The terms, Bach would get one daughter and Hoff the other, until David got both. But this would actually be reversed years later, when Pamela Bach appeared to have an up-close and personal look at what life with Hasselhoff was like. In an interview with Daily Mail, Pamela said she always felt like she came second to alcohol. From her point of view, quote, "Everybody thought David was the golden star in swimming trunks on the beach with Pamela Anderson, but the drink was taking over his life. To me, he was the man who fell over on the bedroom floor." Now keep that visual in mind, because it is going to come back later, and by David's own admission, change his life for good. But before that, he was also in the grips of choosing the bottle over his family. And that did not leave as glowing an impression on Pamela as it actually did on Catherine. The guy Pamela knew had her saying he had a disease, just like cancer, one that was infecting the entire family. Alright, so 2 up and 2 down. Third time's the charm now, isn't it? And the timing of number 3, Miss Haley Roberts, says a lot about his troubles behind the scenes. The two actually met back in 2011 when he was a judge for Britain's Got Talent, and she was a store assistant asking for a photo with the Hoff. So first things first, the 28-year age difference. A fact that Hoff is well aware of, because he once admitted, quote, "I waited to propose because I thought I was too old for her." But to hear David talking about these things, it's like night and day. He says stuff like, to have somebody there to support me who isn't in the industry and who tells me the truth. The people in this industry a lot of times don't tell you the truth, and that's what gets you in trouble. As for Haley, she looks back fondly at the time they first got engaged, even if she didn't actually believe they were at first. I say that because when he was making his big proposal, she thought he was joking, and then he actually pulled out a ring, and then the tears flowed. Okay, remember wife number 2, right? Pamela, who said the Hoff chose the bottle over her. Now he wasn't gonna get away with that this time, because for Haley, family is first above all else. She proudly says, quote, "I was lucky enough to have gotten brought up in the most amazing family. Seriously, I wouldn't change a thing about my life. Growing up with my mom, dad, brother, and 2 sisters always made fun out of every boring situation." So we see how Haley values family as a way to turn bad things into good, and we see that the Hoff didn't ruin things with this one. We also get a bit of a look into the mindset we're dealing with when Haley talked about their age difference. She said, quote, "David acts so much younger, he doesn't seem his age. I'm probably older than my years. I don't feel like he's that much older than me." Haley was more right than she realized about how family can turn wrongs into right, something that David would have to confront sooner than later. What happened to David Hasselhoff on America's Got Talent? Despite his really weird rocky rise to fame, the Hoff managed to become a cultural phenomenon around the entire globe, with a little something for everyone, from a ballad for freedom on the Berlin Wall in 1989, to a wacky role in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie playing a speedboat. He moves faster in the water than he ever sprinted across that beach, but maybe it's because they were always in slow motion. He eventually fit time into his very busy TV schedule for America's Got Talent. The biggest complaint executives had was that David's drunken antics were becoming way too much to handle, and the damage he did far outweighed what he brought to the table as a judge. Or that's the AGT version of things. If you ask David, he'll say he left to pursue his lifelong dream of starting a TV show of his own. But a quick glimpse at the resume shows that nothing remotely like that came until 3 years later with the show Meet the Hasselhoffs. Then after the Hasselhoffs, there wasn't much else like it for a long time. But stories, horror stories, Hoff stories came out of the woodwork. Like him getting kicked out of Simon Cowell's birthday party for getting too drunk and dropping a metric truckload of swearing.
You used to have a car that started when you talk to it. Now you have a car that won't start when you blow into it.
Now throw in the drunk driving complete with DUI charge, public incoherence. Some outlets even said he was hospitalized for alcohol poisoning. The dismissal could have made or break David, but instead of straightening out his act, it was kind of the return to instability. Only this time, he lost what was supposed to be a reliable gig when he could least afford it. Literally. If you don't know, David is self-described a big spender, admitting stuff like, quote, "I'm a spender for sure. I don't save anything, I just go for it." That had his net worth drop a fraction of what it was. After one time being worth $100 million, he was down to 10. Which, sign me up, but for the Hoff, that wasn't going to cut it. He had alimony from a very messy divorce of his own making, if we read between the lines. David said his career was far too kneecapped for him to pay the original alimony amount. A year in the life of David's wallet meant $66,000 in just base expenses, then losing huge chunks of income to taxes and alimony. In fact, when he was petitioned to have the payments cut in 2016, his paperwork said the Hoff had a whopping total of $4,000 to his name. This wasn't only a recent thing either, but a pretty ongoing problem for most of his career.
What's your favorite type of omelet?
Don't hassle the Hoff.
Rubbing salt into the wound, insiders pretty much agreed that back when he got booted from AGT, he lost a whole lot. Probably the most telling insider comment was, quote, "He was absolutely devastated at the news. The show provided the majority of his income." But see, that wasn't the wake-up call that got Hasselhoff scared straight, not even close. The real game changer was something much messier, somehow even more public and way more embarrassing. Was David Hasselhoff in every episode of Baywatch? Any foray into fame means tempting fate, now trying to be in an environment where everything's value, from the show to each actor, is based on beauty. There's an interesting and frankly heartbreaking trend we can see among the cast of Baywatch. Addiction runs in the family on the beach. Dark Side of the 90s narrator Mark McGrath told Showbiz Cheat Sheet, quote, "The women had to stay pencil thin, but just the right kind of curvy." But McGrath also revealed that the guys felt horrible pressures too. He pretty much threw back the curtain of the huge downside of the famous show. He said, quote, "It really affected them and still affects them to this day. When you think of Baywatch, you think of running down the beach and the girls and the idealistic life that really, when you peel back the layers, was a pretty dark series in production." And Hasselhoff was exposed to that for the show's entire run as Mitch Buchanan. Well, almost all of it. He made the plane ride to Hawaii when the show's location moved, but he was killed off before season 11. That was when Aquaman himself, Jason Momoa, appropriately took over the reins. But that was a whole long time keeping up with those impossible demands and getting fuel from the worst possible place.
I guess that's what they mean by dead weight.
The Hoff has had a few self-aware moments in life, like, quote, "I was laughing about all these people who made money and lost it, and I was saying, how could that happen to them? All of a sudden, I woke up one morning and said, oh, I realize now." But the parent would get some parenting from his own child before anything really changed. It was May 3rd, 2007. You might remember this video. His daughter Taylor recorded a home video, and it wasn't America's funniest. The Hoff said, floor burger, my favorite. Throw in some profanity and talk back to his daughter. I mean, Hoff, you sure know how to flatter someone. So yeah, Hasselhoff is of course drunk as a skunk in this. And it was this sloppy and alarming footage that Taylor shared with him, but also the media. 1,000 screens showing 1,000 drunk and cursing Hasselhoffs having the most dilapidated burger you ever did see. And viewers also got to hear Taylor set some shocking and heartbreaking ultimatums, even if the Hoff didn't want to hear what she had to say at first.
Tell me that you promise you're not going to get alcohol, and you're going to stop drinking.
Was this the right thing for Taylor to do? Debate erupted and continues to this day about her actions. Should she have recorded him? Should she have shared that video? We know the answer to some of these. Dark Side of the 90s narrator Mark McGrath told Showbiz Cheat Sheet, quote, "We all saw the video before, but he asked his daughter to please tape me next time you see me drunk because I don't believe I'm doing what you're telling me I'm doing." And David also didn't believe he had his family to count on, to lean on. He had been divorced from Pamela for about a year when the video went viral, but Pamela was, of course, furious. She laid down the law pretty clearly, saying, quote, "I don't want my daughter taping him and involving herself just so he can see himself intoxicated. She is not the parent, and I don't want her playing the parental role. It's very upsetting. This is an obvious cry for help." Now David also has some pretty understandably mixed feelings on this entire thing. On the one hand, he says it was a private matter that should have never been shared like that, but that he also got exactly what he asked for, and he's the first to say, quote, "For me, it was actually a good sign because it was a wake-up call and it brought everything to a head. Finally, I just said, look, this has all got to stop." Now, it all didn't stop for Hoff just yet, and the life-changing home video did cost him a bit. For one, he lost the little bit of visitation rights that he had, and so he had to dedicate himself to AA, which he credits as a huge help in getting him back on track. He also thanks his family and a newfound sense of self-respect.
And my daughters were the ones who basically laughed about it. They said, "Dad, let it go."
The guy who's been called immature and babbled at his own teenage daughter learned, quote, "The real heroes in life are the people who pick themselves up when they get down and then get up and they get back in the race. They go and they get help." He's been crowned as the world's most watched man on television, thanks to 1 billion views across 140 countries. Yep, seriously, one watched man. Technically, Hugh Laurie, House, stole the crown in 2011.
It was either that or get my hair highlighted. Smugness is easier to maintain.
So, Hasslehoff cemented his place once again, with the record for the highest height of a human catapulted using a reversed bungee system. Very specific, I know, but the numbers are still pretty impressive, nearly 230 feet. Sure, David Hasselhoff didn't wish for his dirty laundry to be aired on screens all over the world, but now that it has, he's kinda candid about what it feels like. Hasselhoff has flat out said, quote, "I love to drink. That was the problem. Everybody loves to drink. It's part of society. Get help. It's really easy and there's a great program out there." He's speaking from personal experience and also learning the hard way, which is the cruelest but sometimes most effective teacher. Thank God Hasselhoff had a very mature family support team behind him. When his daughters had to contend with mom and dad splitting up and dad finding a new sweetheart who could have been their sister, he said, quote, "I told my girls what I was going to do and they were both really supportive. It's tough. No one wants to see their parents split up, but they love Haley and they're just happy for me." Now, it looks like the Hoff has some solid advice to share with them and the world. If you have a problem, you should just deal with it, whatever it is. Now, my problem is ending this video, which I so enjoyed making. So, what's your favorite David Hasselhoff performance? Knight Rider or Baywatch? Are any of you David Hasselhoff music fans? The dude has a huge following in Germany.
Can't live without your love.
And finally, what do you think of the way the drunk hamburger video was handled? Do you think his daughter should have shared it that publicly? Get down below and tell us all things David Hasselhoff, because after all, we're nothing without you. For my entire Do You Remember team, we treasure the human connection as part of the power of nostalgia. And so the only robots here are the ones warning Will Robinson of danger and Rosie the helpful Jetson bot. So please, click that thumbs up icon if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a beat. But most importantly, from all of us here at Do You Remember, thank you so much for watching and have a safe swim.